Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. This is a video for a question that was asked in the comment section uh, by, let me see if I can pronounce this, Christian Henriquez, 2973. Hey Gamble, I love to request a unique video. So I had eye surgery last November, and I've been in recovery since. I got back into playing Warframe, and well, I can't use most frames since they're flashy and playing Rev all the time is kind of boring. LR2, by the way, love to hear your suggestions on what frames and weapons can visually impaired people play. Okay, so first and foremost, this is like 99.9% a settings issue. We'll talk a little bit more about like color choice, depending on what your issue is. Yours is surgery related, but say, like I don't have any issues with my eyes, but if I'm playing with somebody, like a teammate that for whatever god awful reason is running a explosive weapon like a launcher, and their energy color is like the brightest white with the brightest white, and I play with them for too long on like max intensity and like bloom and all that, even I get a headache, right? So like most people will have this, especially with Warframe. Warframe absolutely positively loves to just vomit effects all over the screen. So first and foremost, literally just lowering the effects is going to be the big deal. But you can see, like we have this launcher here. Just by using darker colors, this is at 200% also. Just by using darker colors, so your eyes aren't constantly trying to adjust from like say a dark area to like explosion with white on white. This reds seem to be pretty good if there's constant like if there's constant illumination from like a high fire weapon. But let's go over the settings first. So obviously hit escape, go to options, up here, search effects, visual effect intensity. A lot of times I find myself just running this at like a 30%, and that's low enough that I won't even have to reduce teammate visual effects. That's me personally, but this is going to be the main culprit. If you're getting like migraines, or you're like looking at the screen and you're like, Jesus, that's too bright, it's hurting my eyes, this is going to be your number one go-to for knocking Warframe's effects down. Okay, you can even do preview visual effects intensity. This little box shows up. 200% is pretty cancer. You can see the effect go actually almost all the way across the screen. It reaches out here. That's a bit much. 100%. Let's be honest, still way too bright. And like 30% for me is a little bit more manageable. But a lot of times you just got to knock it down to 10. Especially if you know you're running with somebody that likes to play cancer colors. If you're playing with somebody that's running like thermal sunder builds, and they just haven't gotten the message that bright green isn't the only color. They're running like neon green or like thermal sunder with like a bright yellow or like a sand color. Reduce teammate visual effects. And you can just type up here real quick, hit escape. And EFF brings it up. Click this, drop this down to 0. Hit confirm, immediately back into the mission. And that'll save your eyes. So this is the same explosion before. Remember, it was 200%. This is all the way down at the other end. There's practically nothing there. You can't even see it. And to be honest, personally, I would say it's a little low. I at least like to see the AoE, like the radius of it. Just so I know like where my distance is, right? But even then, this is pretty usable. And this weapon is one of the more annoying ones. So that's going to be like 95% of the work. The next one is going to be Bloom. This one can get pretty bad. And we'll put effects back at 100 so you can see. Way more visible. I don't even use Bloom. Because it adds that sort of cloud effect. The haziness, the glow. So that on top of something that's bright can be pretty cancer. To be honest, I just turn it off. Like, not even like issues. And this is at 100%. Normally you would want to run it at 50. Just even on the screen itself, you can see how much more contained it is. But that's if you even want to run it. I don't even use Bloom. Personal preference. Most of the settings, you know, I know they really, really care about their effects and their stances, and I know the art team cries every time somebody lowers the settings and all that jazz, but it's just, I want to be able to see the game. So visual effects intensity is going to do like 95% of the work. Out of that last 5%, 3% of it is going to be the amount of effects. So in settings, GPU particle quality, particle system quality are going to be another big thing. That's going to be personal preference again. Less particles, less crap on the screen. I turn them off. Like, I have a 12900K Intel processor and a 2080 Titan NVIDIA video card. And I run this thing on the exact same settings that I was running it with a laptop. The only thing that's different is I have a higher frame rate, right? Like, all of this crap's turned off. Like, even anti-aliasing is at 0. So it's just, I'm used to it. So to each their own. So 95% of it's going to be visual effects intensity, especially if it's your effects that are causing the eye strain. Reduced teammate effects can also be pretty massive, so that's like half of the remaining. Because that will independently reduce your teammates' effects on top of reduced effects in total, right? Bloom is the next big one because that clouds the screen a lot. So if you have a lot of particles and they have a lot of glowing shit all over them, getting rid of that will just show particles. It won't show like that cloud effect. The next thing, I guess, regardless of how you want to talk about it, is I went through a couple of the, like, say you have like migraines and whatnot. They were recommending green. And that wasn't, it wasn't that big of an issue for me. It was more about just having the color darker. Because obviously green, like if you were to have like neon green, that could still do it. But just having darker colors is the biggest issue. They also recommended, what was it, like a rose? Warm 2700K temperature. So like right between these is sort of a really nice temperature of your white, where it's a warm color. Oh, here's a better one. Here we go. This one. Something with more than 5 pixels. Okay, we'll do this. So some like closer to this one where it's like still a little bit yellow, but kind of orange. So maybe something like sand colored, or like a yellow with some like bronze in it. Um, will help you out depending on what the nid rating of your computer screen is. Um, if you don't want to use like a color correction, or like a, what do they call it, like an eye protect or like a night mode, or like an eye care, depending on what your Windows setting is or what your computer setting is. Sometimes they have stuff that's related to the time of day that can put in some work in terms of easing the pain of whatever you're looking at. But if I'm looking at something and it's like this 6,000 and I'm shooting something that's really annoying, even I get a headache. So whatever your issue is, the next step is to sort of customize whatever the issue is. I am a bit of a fan of like the plum with like a sand color for my explosions, and a fairly weak coloring on it. Like we have this, right? This is red and I think black. Ferox. Actually, it's a brown and a black. If we were to do, like, say, like a sanctum, like a dark pink, sort of washed, and like a sand. This is a little bit bright, but it sort of blends in with the background a little bit, especially if you match the color to the tile set. And this is really easy to look at. So if you know you're going to be doing Grineer missions, pull from the Grineer palette. Do like your coal or your coral and like a black for like the Zeraman. Like grays and like magentas for like Corpus. Just find something that matches the tile set. Like even as big as this explosion is, this isn't hurting my eyes, right? And even when you throw it, you can still see it nice and clear. But this isn't intense at all. So that's like 99% of making the game visible is just everything that DE worked on visually and put so much time and care into it. I mean this with like a sense of humor, but also understanding the irony of it. But if you just turn all that shit off, the game looks fine on its own, and just figure out what setting you give a shit about. Like for me, I like the textures. I've got the VRAM, I've got the speed. On my computer. So texture memory is set to high. Like it's not a big deal. Like shadow quality, I couldn't tell the difference between high and medium. I mean, obviously, if you stop and like lean down and like stare at a shadow, you can clearly see a difference. But considering this is Warframe and you're sprinting past it, doing like a triple backflip and nuking a room, low is fine. Okay, maybe this would be this is more of an issue if you're doing Captura, or you're in like a dojo or something like that, and you're like decorating. You want to standardize what you're looking at, so everything always looks the same. But for me, I found that the only thing I cared about was texture memory. But that's me. Everything else, if I went from like low to medium, I literally couldn't tell the difference. And even on the stuff that was high, if I knocked it down to medium, it was kind of the same thing. Now, one of the things, now depending on what you're doing, anti-aliasing, at least going from low to medium, can help. But that's not going to change like intensity and like what's giving you a headache. So go through each of the settings, turn them all off, and then sort of rebuild what you want on it. Just know that shadows are super fucking expensive in terms of resources. Also, especially because you have like 8 different kinds of shadows on here. And the volumetric fog. I keep hearing that it's causing like performance issues with DirectX 12. So as long as you don't use high, from what I understand, like you can go down to medium. But man, they put all this time and effort into all this stuff looking good, and man, it does a great job looking good until I click this button and take it off. It's with all the effects and everything that Warframe has, I just don't need to see it. I'm trying to actually see the game. It's too much. It looks great though. Like occasionally I'll turn everything on. I even did like a video where it's like uh more effects than pixels or whatever I called it, and it's literally blinding. Um, so yeah, I think that's all that needs to be said about it. So, effects intensity is the massive culprit and your main way of controlling it. I like running about 30%. Um, it you might have it stuck to 200. That is generally going to be freaking blinding. So if it's at like 100%, try knocking that down. Uh, Obviously, sort of like like a test, like a use the scientific method on it. Turn everything down and like crank everything up in mission, like one at a time, and see what the issue is that's giving you headaches. Or causing you to have like pain in your eyes, especially if you had surgery. You don't want to mess around with that. Even though it's just sort of like it's taking care of itself. But if figure out what the issue is, effect intensity is the main culprit, like 90% of the time. I do personally find Bloom a little annoying. And also just lowering the particle quality, like particle system quality. You can't get rid of it. GPU particle quality, I turn it off. It's too much of too much. Like I'm trying to shoot enemies and there's like a million particles in my way. But if you like it, consider knocking the quantity down, the quality down, um, and it'll obviously not make your room as hot, but it'll be less stuff for your eyes to adjust to. So other than that, the palette wise, anything dark. Generally, you don't want to go completely black. Like this is that sort of magenta sand color. Works on this background. Try to go for a gray, especially on the outside. The gray isn't very visible, and this is from the smoke palette, just any gray. The second, when you form a weapon, it'll unlock the second energy color. Normally it's one color, right? But when you put a forma in, you gain the second one. So if you do like a black and gray, it's not too bad also, but ideally you're looking for it to disappear, right? But even then, like there's some things you just can't get rid of the color on. Like if you look at this, it's got this yellow like strip on it from like an energy color. And it's because of a skin. But if you look at the appearance, like, what do you know? No attachments. It's the skin that puts the yellow on it. So I don't know what's specifically triggering your eye pain. But these are all the sources that I could think of. Just effect intensity is like a really good place to start. And then the next is going to be energy color. And then start tweaking other settings if that doesn't do it. Preferably do like a gray over like a black. Because if you do like your energy color of like black on black, it can make sort of like a black cloud. Right, so you got this and it's gray, which is hard to see through. but that gray on gray could be less annoying to you than the black on black. Because this can definitely, especially with like high fire rate weapons that have like a small AoE, say like an Exceltra, this can just become like a black blob. So play with the colors. I highly recommend the secondary being like a gray or like a dark magenta. I really enjoy those. And checking effect intensity, because this is like the cheap effect, right? And it's hardly noticeable, but it's a higher quality AoE slightly. But you can see like the particles going everywhere. So sometimes that can help, but now you see like a smoke cloud, right? So it's up to you. It's part of the reason why I run everything so cheap. But anyway, I hope this helps. So effect intensity is culprit number 1. Figure out what level works for you on that. Next would be energy color. This applies to the frame also. It's the thing that's changing the color of whatever's going on. You run in like thermal stunder. Run like double gray, or do like a gray and a black or something like that, or like a gray and like a dark purple. Those are really, really easy to have everything disappear with. And then start tweaking other settings. But effect intensity, and on top of that, reduce the effects of teammate effects, or reduce teammate effects also on top of that. And that can clear up a shit ton of your screen. And then you'll have to readjust like effect intensity so you can see everything. It's a little bit of troubleshooting, but that's probably the culprit. And then after that is bloom. Bloom could also be the culprit also, especially if you're doing 200% effect intensity and like 200% bloom, or 200% bloom, or whatever it is, maxed. You'd probably need eye surgery just from that anyway. But anyway, I hope this helps. If you're watching this and you got like say chronic migraines or something, look up whatever your issue is with your eyes, and then look up like the least like say for like chronic migraines, you can look up, and like they say like green light is like therapy a little bit. So it's like the least likely to trigger some forms of migraines. Whatever you have, look up whatever it is, and look up like the best color for whatever your issue is. And then try to lean into that color spectrum, right? Because ultimately, like if you have like epilepsy or something like that, you'll have to watch what colors you use. Like you wouldn't want to use like white on white. If you get migraines, or like just headaches in general, figure out what's causing the issue. For me, it's bright white energy color. On like high fire rate weapons like an Exceltra, that will generally trigger it, especially if I'm using it for a long time. So just little bit of research, not a lot. Just look up what's the best color, or the color that doesn't trigger whatever you got going on, and that would be like the final thing. And then just start fashioning around it, right? Ultimately, fashion frame is end game, and there's nothing better than a color scheme. Have your own color scheme. But either way, I hope this helps. I rambled on long enough. We're at about 25 minutes. Thank you for watching this video if you got this far. Have a blessed day.